Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on DAM solutions, cloud versus on-premise. I'm sure you enjoyed our wonderful video, but before we dive in, I wanted to once again urge you to submit any questions you may have at any point during today's session using the Q&A section in the webinar console. Also, this session will be made available on demand after the webinar, so to rewatch it, simply use the link from your confirmation email, which is the same link you use to access this live webinar. Also, if you're watching this on demand, you can actually continue to submit questions and someone from the team will get back to you. And it's worth noticing that the webinar console is completely customizable. Feel free to move around different sections, minimize or maximize elements. And if at any point something gets lost, simply click the icon on the bottom of your screen and you'll be able to get it back. And you can also register for our upcoming webinar on streamlining marketing operations in the tech landscape by simply clicking on the button you can see on the right-hand side, just below the resources sections. And we've made this available for those of you who, like myself, are very busy or, in other words, very lazy. With that, let's dive into today's sessions. First of all, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Georgi Mirazchiev. I'm a digital marketing specialist here at Bynder, based in London. And today I'm excited to be joined by Kristina Huddart, one of the most recognized experts in the digital asset management industry. Kristina, it'd be great if you could introduce yourself briefly.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kristina Huddart. I'm an independent DAM consultant who works with brands like yours to help you build the business case for a DAM, maybe evaluate the health and maturity of your current DAM system, and then to optimize your DAM practice.
Thanks, Kristina. It's very good to have you here. So let's dive in. The goal of today's webinar is to show you how a cloud and on-premise DAM systems compare to each other. And to do this, we will start by exploring some of the main differences between a cloud and on-premise DAM solution, obviously. And we will then hear from Kristina, who will talk to us about some of the main things to consider when looking at comparing a cloud and on-premise solution and how these relate to your specific needs. And then we will look at some case studies of companies who have transitioned from an on-premise solution to cloud using Bynder, and we will finish the webinar with a Q&A session where we will answer your most burning questions. So once again, please feel free to submit any questions at any point. Before we dig into the session, obviously we are Bynder, we are hosting the session, so let's introduce ourselves very quickly. And I wanted to give you a very quick introduction on who we are. We are a leader in digital asset management, and we have more than 1,800 customers now globally who use our cloud-based digital asset management solution to centralize their content storage and content production in one platform. It's easy as that. And you can see some of the leading brands that use our platform, such as IKEA, Spotify, Formula One, and many, many others. So as today is all about DAM software, I thought I'd set the scene a little bit and illustrate what we feel is the standard DAM system functionality set, not just for a system like Bynder, but generally in the DAM space. And to us, a DAM system in 2020, whether it's based in the cloud, whether it's on-premise, whether it's a hybrid solution, should first of all have the tools that allow marketers and creatives to store and manage all their content. And after all, this is the core functionality of any digital asset management system. We also feel that an integral part of a DAM system is the creation of assets. So the ability to empower users to create content, which is on-brand, and the ability to scale that content through tools such as branded templates for print content, for digital, and for video as well. And lastly, the ability to distribute that content is also essential. After all, it's great to have loads of content, but if no one is seeing it, accessing it, why have it in the first place? And it's also key to know how your content is being used, and if it's being accessed, and by who. So any serious DAM system would have an analytics module running through every stage of the asset lifecycle. With that said, let's have a look at the differences between a cloud and on-premise solutions and how they relate to digital asset management. And a very quick note for those of you who are unfamiliar with the terms cloud and on-premise. On-premise software is software that you or your company buys and installs directly on your systems or your servers. And cloud or web-based software is software based online or in the cloud. And that software is provided usually by a third party or listed as a service that you purchase monthly from another company. There is a third hybrid option, which I mentioned earlier, where a company can run some of their on-premise software to a private cloud instance, but we are not going to cover that today because it's a not very popular approach for DAM systems in general. So what are the high-level differences between cloud and on-premise software? Not necessarily just for digital asset management. These apply to all software. Kristina is going to delve deeper into each area in a bit more detail in her section, but to quickly kick things off, cloud systems are usually much faster when it comes to bug fixes and updates, and are generally perceived as less secure compared to an on-premise solution. On the other hand, on-premise solutions usually have much longer implementation times and are more difficult to scale up, but you have more control over what features and functionality the system has as you're developing the software yourself. And lastly, the costs of both solutions are vastly different. Cloud solutions usually have a much higher running or subscription costs and very low implementation costs, while on-premise solutions are the complete opposite, with a much higher initial outlay of capital and very low running costs. And I think now is the time to see what our audience thinks, what you think. This is a poll which you can answer single choice. We really want to understand, now you know what the difference between cloud and on-premise is, how much of your software or how many of your marketing applications are on-premise? Is it just a few that are on-premise, maybe some legacy systems? Is it 30 to 50%? Is it more than 50%? Or are you 100% cloud-based? And I was thinking that about us at Bynder. I was thinking how it would be quite embarrassing if we have less than 50% of our applications on the cloud. But luckily, I thought about it, and we are 100% cloud-based. So that is good for me. Kristina, from your experience, what do you think the audience may say on this one?
Yeah, well done, Bynder, for being 100% cloud. I think that quite a few companies still have some of their marketing applications on-prem. So I think we're going to be kind of skewing option 2 or option 3. But over the past few years, I have seen the trend moving further toward cloud and away from on-premise. So I'd hope that at least 50% of everyone's marketing applications are in the cloud.
Right. Let's see what the audience says. Wow, that is impressive. Yeah, a large majority are 100% cloud-based, and seems we were right. And that's obviously as a 100% cloud-based solution, that's great news to us. But that is very good. Well, now I'll hand you over to Kristina, who will talk to us about some of the things to consider when choosing between a cloud and on-premise solution. Over to you, Kristina.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Georgi. All right, so when you're choosing a new DAM system, or maybe you're choosing a replacement DAM system, I know that you have a huge list of considerations, right? But here are a few more on the technical and IT side to consider. Particularly if you're down to, let's say you're down to 2 vendors, they meet your general functional requirements, and one is on-premise and one is cloud-based. How do you decide between the 2? Now, a fun fact I just learned from market research company Forrester is that 98% of Forrester's business customers today are opting for a SaaS cloud-based DAM system. This is a massive shift from what the DAM marketplace looked like even a few years ago, when the cloud was still a bit of an unknown. I remember when the first DAM system I ever implemented for a client 8 years ago, it was the first cloud-based application in the whole business. The DAM was the guinea pig, and it was a pretty big risk for the IT team, who had never done anything like this before. But luckily, they trusted me, and it ended up being a huge success. And since then, they've been moving more of their applications into the cloud. But look, don't select a vendor because cloud is trendy. Make sure that you consider these elements in depth to figure out what's right for your business. As with all things in life, there are pros and cons to each. So let's dive into each of these in a bit more detail. So first of all, cloud-based SaaS systems and the cloud-based data storage have become much more reliable and secure than ever before. Most SaaS providers will run their software off of large, reliable cloud providers such as Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure. which have security experts working to keep the data safe day and night. But some people are still more comfortable with being able to physically touch their own data on-premise. I too have my own little hard drive here. And it is comforting to have it in your hands and to feel like, it's safe with me. But this isn't really about a feeling of security. Let's talk about the concrete reasons why your IT team might be considering on-prem versus cloud and what's best for your business. So the first thing you want to do is talk to your teams, might be your legal team, about the regulatory compliance requirements. So many DAM providers now, like Bynder, should have an ISO certification for information security management. So make sure they have that. Then also, depending on your industry, you might have additional regulations that you need to adhere to. So many of you might be EU or Europe based. And if you've got a DAM that holds images or videos of people, then your system as well as your data needs to be GDPR compliant. If you're US based or you're in the pharmaceutical, insurance, or medical industry, you might also need to ensure that you follow health regulations. So in the US, there's a HIPAA compliance regulation that you need to follow. So take those things into consideration and make sure your vendor has those elements. Also, it can't hurt to check what your competitors are doing. Make sure you also talk to your IT teams about their strategy. Where do they want to go with cloud? Are they planning to move more applications to cloud? And is that the way the DAM should go? And then consider, do you want to maintain the security in-house or do you want it managed? So in-house managed services are great, but you do need to have the resources and skill sets in-house. So I have a little story about this. I had a client who paid a production company about 10 grand to produce a series of really beautiful films. And because there was no cloud storage at the time, or at least this company hadn't purchased any cloud storage, and the content was way too big for the servers that they had. It was all shot in 4K at the time, which was too big. So the IT team decided, okay, let's store the hard drives in a secure locker. And they locked it away. And then a few years later, when after I'd implemented a cloud DAM system into the business, I went to them and said, okay, I think we're ready to get this content onto the DAM. Can we access it? And they quite sheepishly replied that actually they had lost the key. And because of that, they had lost the content. Now, the moral of this story is that it's really okay to admit that in-house security and maintenance of on-premise systems is hard to get right, and it's expensive, and there are risks. And it's one of the main reasons that companies are now moving to managed cloud services for business applications. And finally, think about the security risks in your business. So most of the time when we think about security risks, we think about hacks or data breaches. Those are the digital security risks. But also remember to consider the physical security risks. If you're going to be holding your data and applications on-premise, then you do need to think about the physical security. So a good example of this was when I worked at Kew Gardens in London. They have an amazing herbarium building, and a herbarium are loads of pressed plants that are pressed and dried and stuck to pieces of paper. And that may not sound that impressive, but they have plants in there and plant records from Charles Darwin going back 250 years. So really important information held there physically. But they also, of course, had their server rooms in the same building. Now, this building is located right next to the Thames. So there is an inherent flooding risk. In addition, because all of the paper in the building, there's a fire risk. So for Q, when they were thinking about whether to go to the cloud or on-prem, they really did consider the physical security and the physical risks as a major deciding factor. All right, so secondly, let's talk about updates and upgrades. This is where cloud-based SaaS systems really come into their own. SaaS is what it says on the box, software as a service. The monthly license that you pay to the vendor includes the service of regular automated delivery of upgrades from the vendor. So you don't need to install patches or the latest versions onto all of the computers. Now, cloud-based systems also have continuous updates. So most DAM vendors are using agile release cycles where your product will be updated every 2 to 3 months. And you probably won't even notice it. And you'll always have the latest and greatest, right? With on-prem providers, there might only be one annual major update. And you just need to consider if you want to wait for those releases each year or if you want those much quicker. Now, with a cloud DAM solution, there's no longer the risk of falling several versions behind or needing to interrupt business to install upgrades. One of my DAM clients was using an installed on-prem DAM, and they had fallen about 4 or 5 versions behind on installing upgrades. Now think about that. 4 or 5 versions for on-prem means that they hadn't upgraded it in about 4 or 5 years. So when they went to consider whether to spend the time and money to upgrade the system, it also gave them the opportunity to step back and to instead, they decided that on balance, it was actually easier, cleaner, and better to just move to a new DAM system. So when you're considering on-prem and cloud, or when you're considering a new DAM system, really take a moment to step back and think about what the future of your company looks like and how this fits in. So the same is true for any bug fixes. You don't want to fall behind on bug fixes. You may remember some of the biggest hacks and data breaches in history have been caused by individuals who forgot to install the Microsoft Windows patches. Don't be that guy. With cloud-based SaaS providers, bug fixes are automatically rolled out, and you don't even really have to think about it. And then, of course, you also want to remember to think about the resources. Do you want to depend on your IT teams to have to install patches and to chase employees to remember to install the patches, right? It only takes one person to forget to do that, and you might have a security risk. All right, so number 3 is scalability. From these pictures alone, you can see that the main point is that physical hardware is more difficult and expensive to scale, and physical hardware needs to be replaced more often. If your company has to invest in on-prem hardware, it's possible that you could end up stuck with obsolete infrastructure that cannot be repurposed. Buying hard drives is a sunk cost that you cannot get back. So this hard drive, for example, is a 1 terabyte hard drive. I bought it 2 years ago, and now I can buy the same sized hard drive at half the price and twice the volume. So really consider that. This will be obsolete in another 3 years completely. So long story short, it's easier and cheaper to upscale SaaS systems, which is a pay for what you use model. So you simply add on users or functionality or storage space via the cloud as your business grows and develops. If you look at the graph here on this slide from a cloud storage company called Backblaze, this is a really good example where you can see that on the left-hand side in 2009, you were paying 10 times as much for 1 terabyte of data as you would have been paying in 2017 for 8 terabytes. And since 2017, this has probably decreased even further. So really consider the scalability and as well, of course, the costs. Now, one of the hardest parts of implementing an on-prem DAM system is trying to estimate what storage you need or how many users you will have when you start out. And the conundrum is, do you start to size the product for what you need now, or do you plan for future growth for what you need in 5 years? And how do you even estimate that? But with a cloud system, you can right size it. So you start off at the size you need for today, and then scale as the number of users and volume of assets increases. And similarly, solutions can be scaled down without wasting resources. From a cost perspective, this is also appealing because you're not paying for empty storage up front. All right, number 4 is implementation and integration agility. So here you want to consider that the time it takes to implement a cloud-native dam can be as much as 6 times quicker than with an on-premise dam solution. So a SaaS dam platform can be set up within weeks or months, whereas an on-prem dam system might take somewhere between months and years, typically. So consider how quickly does your business need to get value out of the dam? Do you really want to wait a long time for this? Next, make sure that you consider your integration strategy up front when you're shortlisting dam vendors as part of your requirements. So cloud dam providers now have armies of developers and resources working on building new plugins and integrations for everything from Adobe Creative Cloud to your CMS and your social media channels. So lots of good connections there. Talk to your vendors in advance to get an idea of what they're doing. Now, the point is that you need to consider your options on how you want to integrate, right? So do you want to, one, build it and maintain it yourself with an on-prem dam? Or do you want to use the cloud dam API to integrate, and perhaps maybe an iPaaS integrator to connect your marketing technology ecosystem? And if that's a little bit too technical, think about it this way. Your brand must create a unique and delightful customer experience that stands out, right? And during the pandemic, we've really started to see a gap grow between brands who are quick to innovate. And if your technology is too clunky and slow to innovate quickly, your brand might fall behind and you'll lose ground. All right, and number 5, thing to consider is cost. Of course, we've touched on cost a little bit, but let's take a closer look. As you can see from this illustration here, what you see on the surface of the cost estimate that you get when you're going through a dam selection process from a vendor may not actually show the whole story. When you're comparing costs between an on-premise provider and a cloud provider, you want to look at what's called the total cost of ownership. Now, on-prem solutions on paper do look much cheaper, and that's because the vendor will only quote you for the cost of the software, leaving you with a responsibility to estimate the in-house resourcing costs for implementation and setup, as well as maintenance and migration. Now, the challenge of the on-premise deployment is that you need people and resources for every step of the way, right? So you need them for maintenance, migration, security, and do you really have these resources available to manage this product? In reality, the total overall costs for cloud software are lower because you don't need these IT resources. The cloud provider manages and maintains this as part of your monthly subscription fee, right? Great. The third party manages all of that, and that is included in the cost. So it might look a little bit higher. Now, when you're thinking about your total cost of ownership, remember to consider the cost of the people that are doing the day-to-day upkeep and maintenance, as well as kind of project teams and IT resources for integrations. And don't underestimate these costs, right? So according to research by Cisco, around 65% of IT department budgets are spent just keeping the lights on. Can you imagine, right? Now, by moving to a cloud-based solution where the service is managed and maintained by a third party, that budget could, in theory, be released and used elsewhere. 65%. Also, consider that if you're using CapEx or OpEx budget for this. Now, if any of you on this call are managing budgets, you know what I'm talking about. Your business might not have the option of plunking down $500,000 in CapEx for an on-prem software implementation now, but you might be more willing to spend, let's say, about $15K a month for the next 3 years to license the software using your OpEx budgets, right? So really consider what's available and what your leadership team are going to approve. Now, when you break down the value, on-premise solutions often have a much higher total cost of ownership over the long run. The tipping point is usually about 2 to 3 years. This is principally because of the rising costs of the IT infrastructure, right? Your hardware, you're going to have to keep upgrading that, and the ongoing IT resource needs. All right, so I've given you one additional bonus round because of COVID. We all need a little bit of a bonus right now. And as we all know, COVID has forced us all inside our homes and working within the limits of our own internet speeds, for better or worse. And as a result, it's highlighted for businesses the need for all of our tools and information to be easily accessible and make it easy for everyone to collaborate remotely. Now, don't get me wrong, of course, on-prem it's possible, it is achievable to work off-site, but it is harder. And I think we've all experienced that pain now, if you haven't before, of having to sign into a VPN connection just to access our files on on-prem servers and to use our company on-premise tools. So your business should not really be paralyzed by the lack of digital web-based tools, not now in 2020, right? There's no longer an issue with a cloud-based, there's no longer this issue with a cloud-based DAM solution. And the new normal is that we can expect that if your business is starting to move to cloud-based applications, that as long as you have a good internet connection, reliable internet connection, hopefully, and you've been given the right permissions, you should be able to do everything you need to do in the DAM without having to log into a VPN. All right, and just to go back and recap, just to remind you of a stat I threw at you earlier, 98% of Forrester's business customers today are opting for a SaaS cloud-based DAM system, 98%. And 100% of my clients over the past 8 years have opted for SaaS cloud-based DAM systems. And I've told you some of those stories about why. Now, the top 5 reasons that brands are opting for the cloud over on-premise is because of the benefits of cloud-based solutions, right? So there's improved business agility, lower overall costs, regular automated upgrades from the vendor, easier information sharing and collaboration, and there's speed of implementation and deployment. Now, make sure you're considering all of these elements and give each one proper consideration when you're building your business case and when you're evaluating your short list of vendors. Thanks so much. And now back over to you, Georgi.
Thank you, Kristina. That was really, really interesting. And I really enjoyed the story about your client who managed to lock their storage into a cupboard. That's something that I will definitely reference when I'm speaking to our clients. Before we go to the next section, I wanted to quickly do another poll. And now that you've heard from Kristina, like some of the 5 or 6 things to consider when choosing a DAM system, we want to know what you are looking at. So what are the most important aspects you consider when choosing a DAM system? So are you looking at security? Are you perhaps looking at updates and upgrades? Maybe you're looking for a solution that scales really well, or you're looking for a solution that is easy to implement. For a lot of our clients, I'm trying to guess here what the audience will say, but for a lot of our clients, accessibility and collaboration is definitely a priority. And of course, cost is always a factor, but it's more about the functionality that a system gives to you and the functionality that you gain from a DAM. So, Kristina, from your experience, what do you think most people would say here?
Yeah, I think maybe you're right because of COVID. Accessibility and collaboration is a big one. But previously, if we think pre-COVID times, I was seeing a lot more customers really considering their implementation and integration strategies, and particularly integrations with API connectors these days is a really big consideration that hopefully your teams are thinking about.
All right, let's see. I know that we at Bynder definitely place a big value on that. So let's see what the audience has said. Oh, it seems like security. And yeah, security is a major issue, which it's good to hear, but it's not something that we expected. Scalability as well, and accessibility and collaboration, of course, probably because of the current situation, more on top of the minds of our audience. Right. let's move into the next session, which is case studies on cloud versus on-prem. And now that you've heard some of the main things to consider when looking at a cloud versus on-prem DAM system, let's have a look at some of the real-life case studies. And yes, we at Bynder are a cloud-based DAM supplier, so we will shamelessly look at why some of our clients chose to transition to a cloud-based system from their on-premise solution and how the two solutions they had compared. So we will start off by looking at RAI Amsterdam. They are located in Amsterdam, as the name suggests, and they are a conference center and event partner that bring people together in both the physical and the virtual world. And they organize, well, in normal times, they organize about 25 major exhibitions a year, attracting more than 1.5 million annual visitors. And as you can imagine, that means a lot of creative assets and a lot of content, videos, and documents created for each event. And RAI worked for years without any content management system for their visual content. And they had about 60,000 assets, which were stored on an on-prem server, and many of them were duplicates. So it was impossible to upload, access, or share the right content in a timely manner unless you were on premises at the conference center. And the team eventually realized that an on-premise storage system with such limited functionality was wasting them a lot of time, a lot of energy, and ultimately a lot of people, as people tended to work in silos. And sometimes they would even commission photography shoots, and they would book them simply because the original photos were not found, as the system was only accessible on premise. So people would book a photo shoot because they didn't know that the files existed. Luckily for us, RAI quickly realized the value of moving all their content to a cloud-based DAM. And since then, they've realized some really great benefits, starting with improved collaboration and visibility of their assets. Now, because all their assets are now accessible to the whole company through a very easy-to-access portal that they can access from anywhere, all their employees can easily find the right content and the right images, so they don't have to duplicate work. And due to the nature of the cloud, when an asset is updated on their portal or when someone uploads a new asset, it is updated everywhere, which completely eliminates the creation of duplicate files. And RAI estimates that all these benefits combined resulted in an average 20 to 30% reduction in photography costs and a significant reduction in time for how long it takes their users to actually find the right file. So a real success story on the benefits of access from anywhere and the difference between an on-prem and DAM solution when it comes to access and collaboration. The next case study we will look at is all about scale and collaboration. And it's about Modus Operandi, which is a luxury online shopping retailer who make use of aspirational editorial imagery, as you can see from their website, which we have a screenshot here. And they have a unique model where they place a high priority on getting images onto their site well ahead of actual product availability. So speed and scale are very, very important for them. In Modus Operandi, they needed a digital asset management and workflow system that could handle the very rapid growth at the time to meet the ever-increasing need for more and more images in their photo library. So at the time, they stored all their files on servers or on-premise servers in their New York City headquarters. So what they found is when the weather was extremely hot, their servers would often crash. So I couldn't believe that when I read that myself, but that actually happened to them. And conversely, in winter, when blizzards hit, employees could take hours just to get to their premises, to get to work, just to be able to access the files that they needed to work on. So for the employees who worked at the remote or overseas offices, access to those files also became a problem when VPX access was slow or non-existent, depending on where people were logging in from, which hugely hindered their ability to collaborate and deliver work on time. And after very wisely choosing Bynder as their DAM of choice, Modus Operandi realized some great benefits. Firstly, with the ability to scale their system at will and add more use and functionality as they need to grow. And they quickly moved all their assets off their internal on-premise server and onto the cloud, so they wouldn't have to worry about their office-based storage system crashing. And so employees could easily access, upload files, download files anywhere from the world. So no more server crashes during summer or the need to buy expensive new servers equipment every time the old ones broke. Because all their files were now accessible from a single place, anywhere in the world, teams that previously could not effectively work on a file together because they were based, for example, in different offices across the globe, could finally collaborate, and that drastically improve their speed and go to market for new products especially. And once again, I hope this illustrates some of the great results that marketing and creative teams can get that illustrate the difference between a cloud solution and an on-prem solution around collaboration and around speed to market. So I hope these two examples have given you a good idea on the differences between a cloud and on-prem solution. And before we jump into the Q&A, I wanted to very quickly give a quick recap on the main differences we discussed and that Kristina also discussed in her section. And hopefully this gets you thinking about some specific questions you may have around DAM versus on-prem. I can see some great questions coming in already, so please keep those coming. So to recap, the main differences between cloud and on-prem is around the speed at which those systems are updated and their implementation times. And cloud and on-prem solutions also differ when it comes to scaling your use up or down and the security and control you have over both solutions. And of course, both systems come with very, very different cost models. So if all of this has got you thinking and you have specific use cases or specific projects you want to discuss with us, do get in touch. Both me and Kristina love talking about them, as I'm sure you've found out from this presentation. And we will be happy to answer any questions you may have. Just drop us a line on the emails listed here, and we will also reach out to you after the webinar. Right, so now is the time for my favorite part of this webinar, the Q&A session. And you still have time to submit your questions, so if you want to ask us anything, now is the time. Now, let's kick things off with the first question that has come in. Kristina, this one is for you. The question is, how difficult is it to transition from an on-prem to a cloud-based DAM?
Yeah, really good question. And thanks for asking this one. This is a good consideration for any company. I think the first thing to consider is why are you moving away from your legacy DAM system? And it's less about the transition and the time it takes to transition from cloud or on-prem to cloud. And it's more a consideration about how long is any transition from a legacy system into a new system. And like I touched upon, there is, of course, the benefit of shorter time to market with your deployment of cloud systems. So if you do plan to move from on-prem to cloud, it should be a much shorter implementation period. But then, how long it takes to migrate content is a question for your business and for, depends on what data you have and how complex it is.
Thank you for that. And I just want to add that most cloud suppliers, not just Bynder, but they usually have specific teams that have worked on such projects in the past. So we, for example, have migrated a lot of our clients from on-prem to a cloud solution, and any decent supplier of a digital asset management software would have a transition team that handles all of that for their clients. So it's possible, and it's getting easier and easier as we do more with these projects. So, right, we have another question. Again, Kristina, you may be best suited to answer this one. Do you still own your content if it is hosted on a cloud-based DAM platforms? What happens to your data when you end your subscription?
Oh, fantastic question. And this was a major consideration for my first client that I was saying was the DAM was a guinea pig. It was the first system that they had moved into the cloud. They were really concerned about this and worried about the security of their data and ownership of their data. And yes, I've never seen a situation where the customer didn't own the data, but make sure it's in the contract. So, read the fine print in the contract or provide your own contract to the vendor. Make sure that you do own the content, even though it is hosted with the cloud-based DAM platform. Again, I've never seen this, I've never seen a situation where the content wasn't owned by the client anymore. And then also, yeah, definitely good to consider what happens when the subscription ends. Also, what happens if there is a disaster or, something one of the cloud server areas burns down, let's say. And it is worth considering disaster recovery to make sure that that's in your contracts as well, and also that you have a plan for what happens when the subscription ends. You should, again, any DAM vendors should be supporting you all the way up until the end of the subscription. So make sure that you work with them to get exports of your data and to move into perhaps another cloud system or a new cloud system.
Thanks for that. That's very clear. And yeah, as you said, for example, with Bynder, if a client wants to move their data, we never actually own the data. We just host it. We host all your content, but we never own it. But we have, again, teams that can export all your data and send it over to you if you make the unwise decision to move away from us. Right, we have another question, Kristina, and again, you work with many different vendors, so it'll be interesting to hear what you have to say about this one. The question is, how much control do you have over future functionality with a cloud DAM? What if a vendor does not have what we need on its future roadmap?
Yeah, really good thing to consider, and definitely something to talk to the vendor about straight from the beginning, right? As soon as you shortlist a vendor, start talking to them about their roadmap. Make sure that your use cases are built considering not only your needs now, but the needs that you anticipate in the next 2 to 3 years. And then compare that to the vendor's roadmap, see if it's on there. Also, most vendors these days are speaking to their customers quite a bit. A lot of vendors have customer forums where they listen to their customers and will align their roadmap to what the customer is asking for. So talk to your vendor or talk to your potential vendors and see how they've done this in the past. And again, going back to the discussion we had before, the difference between cloud and on-prem is that with on-prem, you get the software, you install it, and then you might get kind of an update once a year. Again, those vendors will have roadmaps, and you should consider that as well. But many companies with on-prem systems start to build their own customizations, and that's when you get into some very rocky territory, and those customizations are hard to keep up. Georgi, do you have a different experience?
No, it's exactly as you described it. On-premise solutions, they develop set of functionality which might be very fit for the business, but as the business evolves further down the line, you find out that no one is using that functionality, and it is because usually it's not core to the features of a DAM system or a cloud-based DAM system. And usually we have, as you said, customer forums. So if we notice that a lot of our clients are asking for a specific feature, we then would look to implement that. And we discuss that with a lot of our clients and make sure that this is actually something that people will be using 2, 3, 4 years down the line. It's not something that maybe you need to develop for this specific project, but it's going to be a huge cost and it will end up not being worth your time. We have another question, which I think is a follow-up to your previous question about the difference between hosting your content and making sure that you have a disaster recovery plan. The question is, why should we consider the disaster recovery for a SaaS solution? And I think this question is more, if it's a SaaS solution, they should already have disaster recovery in place. So I think what Kristina was saying is make sure that the vendor that you're evaluating, they have robust disaster recovery processes. What happens if their servers crash down? Do they have robust backups? It's very important, and you might think, yes, all suppliers have this, but please double check that you do. We at Bynder definitely have it, but we know of a few cases where this hasn't been the case, and people have just assumed, oh, if something goes wrong, you have a way of doing this, right? So please, read the contract, read the fine print, make sure that the vendors you're choosing have disaster recovery in place for their data. Right, and so with that final answer, we have reached the end of our webinar. Thank you so much to Kristina for joining us, and thank you to everyone who tuned in today. You will receive an email with the webinar recording, so you can watch it at a later time. And if any questions come afterwards, please reach out to us. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great rest of the week.